Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cultured Pull List. This week, we are wrapping up our coverage of the Human Target 12-issue miniseries from last year by Tom King. So, without further ado, let's get into the Human Target Volume 2. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Cultured Pull List, or if this is your first time, welcome. So last week we talked about the first half of Tom King's The Human Target miniseries, and obviously today we are finishing it up. Before we do that, there's a couple little pieces of comic news I wanted to talk about. So the first one is apparently DC is going to be releasing the DC Marvel crossovers in like omnibus graphic novel form. This is coming out this summer,
hmm
2024, and they're coming out with looks like four of them.
Okay.
So there's DC slash Marvel, the
Yeah.
Amalgam Age Omnibus, which is stories that came out in '96. Then we
hmm
have DC versus Marvel Omnibus, which is just a bunch of like I don't remember when they came out, but there were like a bunch of versus like one shot kind of issues with like Batman versus Captain America, Batman.
Yeah. I believe that was, if I remember correctly, I think that was around the same time as the amalgamation, if I remember correctly, but I'm not sure.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. And then there's the DC versus. Wait, what the hell? This is like the same thing. Okay, my bad. Okay, so
There you
there's
go. Okay.
two omnibuses. Light bulb figured it out.
Okay.
There's two omnibuses. For some reason, the site listed them twice
Hmm.
because one, like each one has a description and then like what issues they collect.
Okay.
But they're in separate sections. It's kind of confusing. But anyway, so two omnibuses: DC Marvel the Amalgam Age Omnibus, which is all the
hmm
amalgam issues. Then there's the DC versus Marvel Omnibus, which collects all of the verses like one shots.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty interesting. I mean,
Mhm.
to be honest with you, I haven't read any of these. I just know they exist.
I think I've read most of them. I have a lot of the single issues. I'm not sure. I don't think I have all of them, but I have a lot of them.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they're not really canon technically,
Right. Right.
but because like there's some crazy stuff like Superman lifts like Thor's hammer at one point or something.
hmm
But that should be pretty interesting though. I'm sure they're
Yeah.
expensive because those omnibus books
Oh
are
yeah.
usually like $80 at least. So,
Right.
but it'd be cool to get my hands on
hmm
one of those, or at least read them somewhere. But the other piece of news I want to talk about, apparently Marvel is relaunching their Ultimates series. So this kind of comes on the heels of them relaunching their
hmm
Ultimates universe, or their Ultimate Universe, which is technically like a brand new universe, Earth 6160.
hmm
And this comes after like Ultimate Invasion and then like Ultimate Universe #1. And this is supposed to be a direct follow up to Ultimate Universe #1. It's a new The Ultimates series. This is gonna be written by Denise Camp with art by Juan Frigeri, and this is gonna go on sale on June 5th, the first issue. And apparently, this team is going to be um, Iron Man, but this is a teenaged Iron Man.
Okay.
I haven't read it, but I believe like all these characters were introduced in like the Ultimate Universe comic and maybe Ultimate Invasion.
Yeah, probably.
But yeah, so there's let's see, there's Iron Man slash Iron Lad, Captain America, looks like Ant Man slash Giant Man, Thor, Sif, or at least their Earth's version of Sif, and then Doctor Doom. But this is
Hmm.
apparently Reed Richards,
Okay.
a version of Reed Richards as Doctor Doom, which is interesting. And apparently, like their main goal, this is Iron Man like forming a team to take out the Maker and his council,
Hmm.
who have been like the main bad guys. And the Maker is the original Ultimate Universe's version of Reed Richards. So yeah, that should be interesting. I think the yeah, because I we haven't really seen the Ultimates in a while.
Right.
And honestly, this team looks more interesting than the original Ultimates to me.
Hmm.
It feels like they're doing more like out of the box stuff
Yeah.
with like with this Ultimate universe as a whole, really,
Hmm.
which I liked. I think for me, a lot of the older Ultimate stuff didn't feel like fresh enough. It just kind of felt like they were just like, imagine if this stuff happened like now in 2002, you know? So I kind of like that they're doing a lot of different stuff with this new Ultimate Universe. And yeah, I hope this new Ultimate series is cool. I mean, just the fact that there's a version of Doctor Doom on the team very much
Yeah.
intrigues me. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, because the original was kind of more like trying to get new
yeah,
readers,
yeah,
and so it's kind of more basic. But I
yeah,
feel like now they don't really need that, so they kind of
yeah.
can go experimenting with more things, and that should be interesting. So,
Right, exactly. Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, let's get back to the human target. So covered all this last week, but so check out our last week episode if you haven't. But just brief recap. So yeah, this was James Gunn's favorite comic
mhm.
of last year, so I wanted to check it out. Um, yeah, so the human target is a character, or at least this version, Christopher Chance. He premiered in Action Comics in the 70s, and he's had several of his own comic series and several TV show adaptations. And he appeared on Arrow for, I think, just one episode.
Mhm.
But yeah, this series was written by Tom King, and he's actually going to be at Motor City Comic Con
Oh, I didn't know
this
that.
year, which is like in Detroit-ish area, which is pretty close.
Mhm.
Well, it's a couple hours away from us, but
Right.
from where I grew up, it's
Yeah.
like probably like less than an hour away. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. He seems like he's like their biggest comic guest that they have,
Okay.
so that should be pretty cool. But yeah, let's get into the Human Target Volume 2. So, this was written by Tom King with art by Greg Smallwood, letters by Clayton Cowles, and these issues were released between September 2022 and March 2023. There was actually some kind of big release gaps, several months between some of these issues. Kind of interesting, but yeah. All right, so where we left off last week, Fire showed up in Christopher Chance's office. So right after that, they went to some like jazz nightclub, and I don't know, this is definitely some tension between them because Christopher thinks that Fire is the one that poisoned him trying to get at Lex Luthor. So they're just hanging out at the club. Neither one's really saying what they're thinking. They decide to just dance a bit. And then the nightclub gets attacked by some thieves, and that interrupts their evening a bit. But Fire uses her powers to melt the guns in their hands, kind of thwarting the robbery in progress. So after that, Fire says she wants to go on a Ferris wheel, so they end up going to this Coney Island esque um, pier fair type carnival area, and um, they get on the Ferris wheel and start talking a bit, and Chance starts to kind of say stuff like, yeah, he thinks she's the killer and she knows it, but she kind of gives him her life story and saying that like everyone just kind of underestimated her and only saw her like as a pretty face, and it kind of probes him and asks like, are you like everybody else? Do you just want to like use me for my good looks basically? And he's like, no, not really, I'm gonna jump off this Ferris wheel instead. So he says like, no, I want you to catch me. So he falls off the Ferris wheel. Fire goes after him and catches him, and he reveals that he basically did that so that she would save his life. And if she really is the killer, then they're pretty much even, so he doesn't really care if she is the killer. She like trying to kind of draw her out and get her to confess. And she doesn't like that very much and starts slapping him a bit. He just keeps probing. She starts slapping him more, and finally he's like, "Nah, we're done with that." And even she kind of backs off. And uh, then, like the next scene, we see Christopher Chance in bed, waking up the next morning with Ice. She had come back in the middle of the night, and they canoodled a bit. And then Ice calls them and wants to meet with them, and I guess it seems that Fire was basically just feeling Chance out and kind of testing him, I guess, and seeing what kind of guy he was, and also kind of seeing if he was going to try and make a move on her like everybody else seems to, which he did not. So then Ice, Fire, and Christopher go outside and talk a bit on Fire's terrace, and she explains that she did get that special water um, from Booster Gold. She got the money from Martian Manhunter, who got it from Blue Beetle, but she ended up getting the water from for Guy. So at this point, it seems like Guy is the one that um, tried to kill Luther and poisoned Christopher. So and last volume we saw Ice and Chance kill Guy. So the next morning, Ice and Chance wake up, but they are attacked. Somebody's shooting these trank darts at them, which Ice is able to block for a bit with an ice shield, but eventually one gets through and knocks her out. And Chris tries to fire back, and it turns out it's Rocket Red, one of the other Justice League International members, but he's able to overpower and knock Chance out. When Chance wakes up, it's been a couple hours, and Rocket Red like offers him a drink, and they drink some vodka, and then Chance says he's gonna break his neck for what he did to Fire, which Rocket Red doesn't take too great and knocks Chance out again. Chance wakes up again several more hours later in the middle of a field with two targets next to him, target dummies, and Rocket Red shoots at them just to kind of intimidate him, and then he lifts Chance up in the air and tries to get information on Guy Gardner, because apparently Guy and Rocket Red are pretty good friends, and Guy told Rocket Red he's been having issues with Chance, and he told him that he was going to go confront Chance again. And ever since then, Guy hasn't been in contact with Rocket Red at all, and miss like a lunch they were supposed to go on together. So Rocket Red rightly presumes that Christopher Chance had something to do with Guy's disappearance, but Chance doesn't say anything, even though Rocket Red drops him a couple times. And the last time, Chance passes out and wakes up even more hours later after dinner time. Um, Again, Rocket Red tries to get information out of him, but it doesn't work. He beats him up a little more and still doesn't work. But in the middle of his slapping Chance around, Rocket Red gets a message, but Chance passes out before he can tell what the message is. And then he wakes up again several more hours later, and he's back in his hotel room with Fire, and Rocket Red is there too, out of his costume, saying that, sorry, my bad. I just got a message from Guy that he was basically sent on a mission to another dimension, pretty unexpectedly, and he has some communication issues with his equipment, so with his comms equipment. So that's why he's been out of contact and why Rocket Red hasn't been able to track him. Um, so he's like, "Oh, sorry, my bad." And then, but at this point, it's 10:37 p.m. at night, and he offers Chance a drink, which he then proceeds to smash over Rocket Red's head and start beating the crap out of him. Pretty pissed off that he's wasted one of the few days he has left. But Ice stops Chance before he can hurt Rocket Red too badly and ends up knocking him out in the process. So Even more hours later, Chance wakes up again. He's in bed with Ice. Ice and Chance talk about how Ice was the one that sent the fake message from Guy to Rocket Red. That was part of their contingency plan, but she didn't wake up from that trank dart for a long time. That's why Rocket Red was able to interrogate Chance for as long as he did. So the next morning, Ice wakes up and Chance's heart has stopped. So she tries CPR, which doesn't quite work. So she takes him to Dr. Midnight again, who uh, gives him a higher dosage of his meds as he had an unexpectedly high attack from the poison. And at this point, Ice and Chance think that that like they've got their man and Guy's dead. So at this point, they might as well just spend the remaining days Chance has together. So they go out on this car trip, just kind of going nowhere, and oh, through like the narration that we have from Chance, he seems to be expecting somebody, though he doesn't name who this is, but expecting somebody to show up, and he expects somebody to have figured out that Guy is missing and to come after them, but we don't know exactly who he's talking about. And Ice and Chance stop at this diner, and he thinks that this patron in the diner is the guy in disguise. So he starts a fight with him, but it's just some random guy. So then Ice gets mad at Chance and asks him what the hell is going on with him, and he doesn't tell her. So she gets upset and loses control of her powers, which causes an ice slick in the middle of the road, which causes them to run off the road and crash. But luckily, the crash doesn't really do anything besides break Chance's car. And Ice expects him to be mad, but Chance is at this point just like, well, I'm gonna die in a couple days anyway. I don't really care at this point. So he and Ice talk a bit and walk through the desert, and she asks Chance like what it feels like, basically dying from this poison, and he says that it hurts. And they just kind of have a couple like heart to heart moments. Um, and then Ice creates this ice house in the middle of the desert, and they decide to hang out in there for a while. And Chance reveals that he's been afraid this whole day that Batman has figured out that Guy is missing, and he's going to figure out who did it and come after them. And he's only really scared of that because he's scared that once Batman finds them, that Chance is going to be captured or whatever, and he's not going to be able to spend the few remaining days that he has with Ice. And then they end up spending the night there, but as Ice is sleeping, Chance is awake because he figures out that the only reason Batman hasn't shown up to arrest him or whatever is because Batman has realized that Guy Gardner must still be alive.
Okay, so they go ahead and head back to Chance's house, but Christopher Chance drugs Ice so she passes out so he can leave, and then he meets up with Gnort. I think is how does he say his name? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, yeah, and so he's like a Green Lantern, but he's kind of like
an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So Christopher kind of like convinces him. He makes up this lie, but he basically convinces him to like get into the OA like records, and they basically have records on every single person, and it's constantly being updated. So if anyone knows where a guy is, it would be in the records. And Gnart reveals that he has like a portal to OA because one time he got lost, and so they just gave him like a teleporter. So he opens the door.
Yeah, he says that like he gets lost in his own bathroom sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they end up there, and then he said last time he let someone into the records, it was Superman, and he got into a lot of trouble. So he's like, if he gets caught this time, it's probably going to be a lot worse. So as Christopher's going through the records, Gnart drinks his bourbon, and then he he reads Guy's pictures, and then he kind of gets a little curious, and so he reads his own, and so there's flashes to like points in his life,
Hmm.
and then
And like
he's
all like the people he kills.
yeah, exactly. And then he kind of has this moment of like, great, I only have like 3 days left, and then they're leaving, and then one of the guardians shows up, and he's really upset, and then like he just throws up and kicks him in the face, and then they leave.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously at this point he knows where Guy is, but he hasn't revealed it yet. Knows well he I apologize. He knows the truth about Guy. Let's put it that way. And so they go to the pharmacy, he picks something up, and then he heads downtown where we see Guy playing pool. And he's kind of just been laying low for the past couple of days. And then he's not super happy to see them. And they agree to like a fist fight with no weapons. And then Christopher beats him up pretty good, but then he ends up using his ring anyway. But then Christopher throws something into Guy's face, and it turns out it's like peanut dust. And basically, through his files, Christopher found out that Guy had a severe peanut allergy, but for whatever reason, he never told anybody, so his ring doesn't protect him against that. So then he's basically like, "You tell me what's going on, and I'll give you the prescription." And then he goes back to Ice, and he's like, I know what happened, and she's not super happy about that. So this next issue starts with a flashback of him and his dad on the beach. They said they used to go there all the time because his dad had sleeping issues, and then Ice and him are there now. And this is basically, even though it's the 11th issue, this is basically the last day. And so they're hanging out on the beach, and then they go out into the water and they build a little ice island, and they're just kind of hanging out there. And then Ice flashes back to the time she died, kind of the one time where she like stepped out and tried to do something good, and then she got killed. And then when she came back, everybody was kind of super okay with it, like super normal about it, I guess. And she wasn't okay with that. But then Guy started talking about how Lex Luthor was responsible for the death. So he was plotting something, but Ice knew that Guy was too stupid to like get away with it. So in order to do it, she decided to do it herself, and she convinced Fire to be in on it as well. And then so they went through with it, but then obviously it turns out that Christopher drank the water instead. And now Ice is upset about it, but Christopher is kind of just fine with it. And she's, as they go back to the car, she's really upset. Like she blows up his car, and she's like, "Why won't you just like kill me?" Like at one point, she grabs the gun and puts it to her head, and is like, "Why don't you just kill me? Because I'm guilty. I'm not a superhero." And then, but he's like super okay with it. And then at the beginning of issue 12, he dies, and he specifically asked that he be alone. And then so Ice comes in after he's dead, checks his pulse, and then at the beginning of issue 1, he wrote a note. Now we see what that note says. And then he goes down to Luigi in the kitchen, and he gives her something, but we don't see what it is yet. And then she's with Fire, and they're talking about the thing that Luigi gave her, but we still don't know what it is. And then we're there. This is day 22 now, so it's about 2 weeks later, and Martian Manhunter's kind of asking questions about Christopher, and then Ice is basically like, "Look, I know you've been sleeping with Fire, and if you bring this up again, I'll tell everybody about it. So just kind of leave it alone. And if anybody asks any questions about Christopher, I'll tell them you did it." And then on day 37, she's out in the water. And one of the items, I believe, I don't think it's ever said, but I think it's kind of implied that this is Christopher's ashes.
Yeah.
And so she's not really sure what to do with it. But then Guy comes out there, and I don't know if we explained this yet, but Guy was in on it the whole time. And so he was kind of earlier in the story, like his more douchey moments were kind of played up, and he was in on it the whole time. So he's not actually a total douchebag, although, he's Guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Ice was the one that told him to like fake his death.
Yeah, exactly.
And,
yeah.
He used his ring to just like create an illusion, basically.
Right. But regardless, she smashes the ashes over his head, and then he passes out, and the ashes kind of go everywhere. And then on day 73, she goes up and she gets this bottle out of her cabinet and she sniffs it, and then flashes back to day 11 right before he died, and he's basically like, because throughout the whole story he was talking about how like he didn't want to be like his dad during his final moments, but then he realized now that being scared and upset is because he actually loves something, and now
Mm-hmm.
Christopher's revealing that he's obviously scared and upset because he doesn't want to leave ice.
Mm-hmm.
And then the issue ends with day 110 with Ice going into Lex Luthor's office and under the guise of interviewing him for about the murder, but really she gave him, it's implied that she gave him the poison in the cup. So that is
Right.
where the story ends.
Yeah. So, get to the end of the Human Target. What did you
Mm-hmm.
think of this miniseries?
I really enjoyed it actually,
Mm-hmm.
right, surprisingly, because like I mentioned last time, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Tom King, but I feel
Sure.
like this is really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the stuff they said last week still stands. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really like the 1950s like detective noir
Yeah,
vibe to
for
it,
sure.
which is fun, and I feel like it kind of blend like it's very aesthetic because like even the way that people dress besides like the superhero costumes,
Mm-hmm.
like Christopher Chance is always in like a suit, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Ice and Fire, pretty much all the women they show are in kind of like somewhat old fashioned looking dresses, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the same time, it blends in well with the rest of the DC universe.
Right.
Um, yeah, I I don't know. I think the first half was a little more interesting, but I thought
Okay.
it was what did you think of the ending? I was kind of surprised that he actually died. I guess
Mm.
because normally in these things like there's like oh well they
Right.
find a way to get out of it, but no they're like
Right.
yeah no he just dies.
Yeah, so I thought the first part was very heavy on like plot stuff and information,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whereas the second part was more focused on like emotional beats
That's
because
true.
he
Yeah.
kind of figures it out like halfway through
Yeah.
this volume. And so the
Yeah.
second half is kind of just focused on like existential stuff, like I'm going to die, and
Mm-hmm.
he's basically taking care of that. And
That
so
is
I
true. Yeah.
think I prefer the second volume,
Mm-hmm.
although I like them both quite a bit.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. I think. Yeah, because I guess the first half sort of has that mystery element,
Hmm.
which is what I enjoyed and found intriguing.
Yeah.
But like you said, the second half is more just like the existential and like emotional growth of the characters and whatnot.
Hmm.
So I guess technically that is kind of like better, like
Sure.
written and everything.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, like it kind of starts out feeling like a mystery, and then by the end, you're like, this isn't really a mystery anymore because
Right.
we kind of know what happened. And I kind of I find it interesting that it's basically like who he thought did it in the beginning is
Mm.
actually who, because at the very beginning
Right.
he got close to Ice because he
Hmm.
thought she was the killer, and she ended up being the
Hmm.
killer.
Right.
Which is interesting, but it also just kind of makes it really messed up, because like in the end, like
Mm.
oh, he fell in love with the person that ended, being responsible
Yeah.
for his death, but
Right.
that like brings a lot of complications to their relationship that was already kind of like
Hmm.
complicated to begin with. But yeah, I liked that they gave Ice kind of a lot of development. Like
Yeah.
honestly, the ending was almost kind of became her story.
Hmm.
But like there's kind of the whole development where she is kind of known by everybody as like this sweet nice person,
Right.
but like she felt kind of constrained and not able to like let loose ever, and like the few times
Hmm.
she's able to, she felt like she was kind of like punished for it, so that was
Right.
kind of an interesting aspect to her character that I liked. But yeah, it was very good. I liked the whole series.
Hmm. Hmm.
It
Yeah.
definitely didn't. It's very unique. It didn't go
Right.
the way I expected. It didn't go the way most like comic book stories would go. It
Hmm.
is, even
Hmm.
though it's kind of part of the main DC universe, it's very self-contained.
Yeah.
What I found a little strange was that like this is under the DC Black label.
Hmm.
Um, label no, but they like censor all the cuss words, which I
Right.
found interesting. Usually in DC Black label they don't care about that, and that they just put on this. So I wonder if Maybe at some point this was meant to be like just the main
Well,
DC. I don't know.
my theory is that it's something that Tom King did intentionally because if you remember, they did it a lot in the Supergirl book as well that we read last year,
Oh,
and that
okay.
was
I kind of
also
forgot
written
about
by
that.
him. So I think it's like
Yeah.
some kind of a stylistic thing, but I'm not really sure.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. That's a decent theory. I hadn't really thought about that. Yeah. So that is
Hmm.
DC Black Labels the Human Target. I do think the ending with Lex Luthor, I feel like lacks a little bit of weight because
Right.
it's in the main DC universe and Lex
Hmm.
doesn't die. So
Exactly.
it's like either this, like, because the whole time it feels like it's part of the main DC
Hmm.
universe, and the only way that's gonna have any weight is if it's like a self-contained, universe where Lex does die, which doesn't seem to be the
Right.
case. So I don't know. That's like the only thing I didn't really like
Hmm.
about it.
Hmm.
But yeah, good story. If you want to
Yeah.
pick up either, like, if you want to pick up volume one or volume two, I'll put the Amazon link in the description. And yeah, to wrap things up for this week,
Hmm.
let's talk about our cultured picks. What you got
Yeah.
this week?
This week I picked up Nightwing 111, and so I was I think the last one I actually read was like in August, I think, because I was kind of burnt out on Nightwing for a while. But so I decided I've bought all the issues since then, of course, but I haven't read any of them. So I read this one, and it was actually better than I thought it would be.
Mm-hmm.
One of the characters that was Nightwing's more recent villains is called the Heartless, and there
Mm-hmm.
was a killing in Gotham City that resembles that character, and so Batman calls Nightwing, and they have a little investigation, but it turns out it's probably a copycat, and all the while there was a like a child. So the person who died has a child that was witnessed the whole thing, and
Mm-hmm.
so that obviously there's flashbacks to Dick's origin story as well, and so and so the kid Nightwing is comforting this child, and at the end the child is taken away by the uncle, and of course the uncle's evil, so it's kind of implied that the uncle's probably something to do with the murder, and so yeah, it
Oh,
was it
okay.
was it was interesting.
Cool. Cool. So I get the feeling you're not a huge fan of Tom Taylor's run on Nightwing.
Not
Is that
really,
true?
no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find that interesting too because didn't he write Adventures of Superman
Yeah,
John
he
Kent, which
did.
was like your
Right.
favorite last
Yeah.
year?
Yeah. I
Interesting.
don't know
What do
what's
you
going
not
on
like
there.
about, like, is it just the story or like the characterization of
It
Dick or?
just felt like for a long time it's just kind of spinning its wheels. Like it doesn't feel like the story's
Ah,
going anywhere. And
okay.
also there's a lot of really weird a lot of very forced like fan service stuff.
Mm.
Like I remember back when I like last year when I was reading it more regularly, like the Titans were showing up like constantly all the
Oh,
time.
I
And it
see.
kind of felt a little bit excessive. So
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I haven't, like, I've picked up a random issue here and there, but I haven't really been
mhm.
following Nightwing for a long time. So yeah, this week I got two um,
Mhm.
issues. So Daredevil number 6 came out this week. Picked that up. Kind of interesting. Like as you can see from the cover, Doctor Strange does show up. Like this
Mhm.
whole relaunch series so far, Daredevil's been like he basically came back from the dead
Mhm.
as a priest somehow, and he didn't have any of his memories. And slowly he gets them back because there's these demons representing like the 7 deadly sins that have been possessing his friends like Elektra and She-Hulk and Ben Urich. And he's been like kind of finding ways to excise the demons, but he ends like in this issue, Doctor Strange shows up and is like, "Yeah, these demons followed you out of hell when you came
Mhm.
back to life, and now I'm gonna send you to hell so you can like deal with your inner demons or whatever."
Mhm.
And he ends up coming out with like this like cool white suit, which he
Mhm.
got when he went to hell last time.
Mhm.
At the end of the last um, issue, the last like Chip Zdarsky run, but now he's basically like, I don't know how long this is gonna go, but now he's basically going around like his mission is both fighting crime, but also like to find these remaining demons and send them back to hell. which I think is kind of cool because
Yeah.
ever since like the end of last run, I was kind of thinking like it'd be cool if they did at least like an arc with Daredevil where he's more like Ghost Rider ish, like more of a
Mm.
somewhat supernatural like
Hmm.
hero,
Hmm.
because like he already like went to hell and like had that experience. It'd be kind
Right.
of cool if he actually fights some more like supernatural forces or something instead of just like
Hmm.
street level stuff. So it seems like that's what they're gonna do at least for a little bit, and then at the end Wolverine cameos for some reason, and it seems like he's going to be in the next issue. So
Okay. Nice.
yeah, should be pretty cool. But my
Yeah.
next pickup, oh, were you going to say
No,
something?
I was just gonna say I'm a big fan of John Romita Jr. did the artwork
Mm-hmm.
for it, and I'm also a really big fan of like hell and demons and stuff. So that sounds really cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think he only did the cover, I
Oh,
believe.
just the cover. Okay. Well.
But the art is actually pretty similar. But I forget who the artist is, but I think he's been doing a lot of the covers
Okay.
for this series so far. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah. So my other pick this week is Ultimate Spider-Man #2.
Hmm.
Part of the obviously huge, pretty popular new Ultimate series. We
Yeah.
kind of talked about it earlier, but what I thought was really cool about this issue, it does feel like they're taking their time, which in a way, like in a way they're doing a good job building things up, but on the other hand, I'm like kind of waiting for more stuff to happen. But
Hmm.
what's cool about this is Peter's discovering how to use his powers and kind of trying to figure everything out. But it's interesting because he's like a 35-year-old man, so there's kind of more of a
Hmm.
um, learning curve to it. And they kind of through like inner monologue narration, they kind of explain some interesting stuff. Like he has to eat like an insane amount of food every day, and like
Hmm.
he doesn't need as much sleep now that he's had his powers and stuff. But what's also interesting is when Iron Man gave him like the spider that gave him his powers, he also gave him like this black suit. But
Hmm.
it's kind of like it's not really nanotech, but it seems to be like kind of like unstable molecules type suit. But it's
Hmm.
basically just like a morph suit with the Spider-Man eyes.
Okay.
And he hasn't had like his classic red and blue suit yet, but they
Hmm.
have kind of given a reason why he changes it, and it's basically that like this suit was in the Daily Bugle, like in the paper on the front page,
Uh-huh.
and his daughter saw it and like thought it was scary looking and it freaked her
Hmm.
out. So then I think like that night or the next day he comes home from like superhero wing. He thinks everyone's asleep, but his daughter's there and sees him and starts freaking out. And he's like, "No, no, no, it's me." And she's like, "Yeah, but you're scary looking." So
Hmm.
it seems like he's gonna change it like because of his daughter, which
Yeah.
I find kind of an interesting reason, and I think
Hmm.
it really fits this character who's supposed to be a
Right.
dad, and like he has his family to really worry about and put like first. So I
Hmm.
thought that was kind of cool, and like he deals with the Shocker for the first time, and yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying this arc so far. Like I've read this and the first Black Panther, Ultimate Black Panther so far. I've
Hmm.
definitely been enjoying the Spider-Man more so far, but
Okay.
it's very interesting. It's
Hmm.
probably the most interesting stuff Marvel's done with Spider-Man in the comics for a long time, I think.
Okay. Nice.
But yeah, that is gonna be our show for this week.
Hmm.
Thanks everybody for watching, for tuning in. If you want to support us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/the cultured nerd and look for our show's tier. Thank you to all the current Patreon supporters of The Cultured Nerd: Wesley H., Mitch S., Connor Y., Anna M., Oscar B., Craig L., and Salib K. I have been your host, Michael Malillo, and my co host has been Luke
Hmm.
S. Our logo and visual assets were designed by Jose Navarro, and our intro was made by myself. Thanks again for joining us. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you'd like to check out The Cultured Nerd on social media, you can scan the QR code on the bottom left or use the link in the description. And if you would like to check out Casual Experts, me and Luke's other brand, you can scan the QR code on the bottom right or use the link in the description. All right, we will see everyone next week.
Peace.